Cheers guys, Epix911, welcome to the Elitist Gamer. Don't mind my chopsticks, still hobbling on my broken ankle here, so you see me hop around a bit, that's why. Today I want to talk about the amazing phenomena of how most of us PC gamers just woke up one fucking morning in 2014, self-professed, whether we acknowledge it or not, Steam heads. You know, PC gamers that are actually okay with digital distribution. How the fuck did that happen? How did we get blindsided by that Mack truck of digital distribution and not even complain? Because I remember, and I'm sure many of you remember, how pissed off we were when Half-Life 2 came out and Steam was a requirement to install. We didn't know what the fuck it did. We were suspicious. Did it phone home? What the fuck was it doing? Why do we need it on our PCs? Here's what I think happened. And I think this is the mistake that Don Matrick and the Xbox One people made last spring and last summer. And it's got to do with adoption rate and how you achieve consumer adoption rate versus how you colossally fuck it up like Don Matrick and Microsoft did with the Xbox One. And it's simple really, and you don't have to look further than Apple. And I'm not an Apple fan. The first PC I fell in love with, admittedly, it was an Apple II. There were a couple of games beneath the Pyramids and Cranston Manor that captured my imagination as a 10-year-old kid. And I was spellbound and I was determined to have a PC. Eventually, that PC became a Commodore 64, but that's a tale for another day. You see, what Apple did right with having us all of a sudden wake up and being okay with tablets and smartphones was they mastered the technique of adoption rate. They came out with a little thing called the iPod, which had a touch screen or a digital readout screen and eventually adopted a touch screen, and they phased it in. We became familiar with looking at MP3s on a device that we plugged our headphones into. It was similar to a Walkman, but it was smaller, it was more compact. So those of us who were used to Sony Walkmans in the 80s or the Discmans that came later, it wasn't a huge quantum leap to using an iPod. And for younger kids, it was just a cool, natural device that would allow you to put hundreds, thousands of songs onto a small device that you could carry around in your pocket. So the adoption rate was a no-brainer. And sure enough, people flocked in with iTunes being a very cheap alternative. Suddenly you could buy just one song off an album that you liked. One song being key because how many of us bought albums in the past, and I'm a huge, huge metal geek. I love all kinds of music except country western, but we're not going to get into that. I fucking hate country, but that's okay. You're allowed to like country. I just don't want it near me, to the point where I'll fucking jump over counters if I hear it. I hate country that much. But you're allowed to listen to it. The point being, it gave you the flexibility for that album, whether it's country for some of you guys, or whether it's metal or techno or whatever for me, or rap, to buy just the tracks that I wanted off that CD or album and ignore the rest. And that was huge, and we can't underestimate that. That was big. Fucking huge. So you fast forward to the introduction of the iPhone, and suddenly we're all used to having a small device carry a lot of information and songs on it, and then you add just a little bit more. You give it the ability to surf, you give it the ability to play games, and remember at that time Nokia was doing this already, but that's all they were doing with their phones. The iPhone could then do that better, plus so much more, via its MP3s and iTunes. And they interfaced into the existing technology that they had deployed a few years earlier. That was fucking genius. That was genius for what was to come. And that was the tablet revolution. Fast forward another couple of years, Apple introduces tablets, and we're okay with it. Because we've been used to the iPhone and the iPod before that. It was a slow, phased-in adoption, consumer adoption rate. And we were comfortable with it, and we were okay with it, and we could see the potential of it. And that's what Gabe Newell, in his own way, and Valve did all those many years ago when he pissed us all off, they still gave us that retail copy of Half-Life 2, you remember? Most of us lined up at the big box stores to get Half-Life 2 the old traditional way. And you only have to remember what the PC game scene was like back then. You could walk into an electronics boutique or a Best Buy and it was almost equal shelving space for PC to console. You remember, you could find all your flight simulators, your first-person shooters, your RPGs alongside the console gaming sections. And the PC almost had equal shelving space. Then things started to change. Again, gradually, because Gabe is a fucking genius, and he took time out from swimming in his swimming pool with fucking $1,000 bills and $100 bills and whatever the hell he puts in his swimming pool to come up for air once in a while and come up with another slow, phased-in approach. Suddenly, Steam could do just a little bit more. It was your librarian. It was your gameskeeper. It was the utility to bring you and other players together multiplayer-wise. And that just continued over the years. And we can't just give Valve and Steam their due without giving Stardock their due. Because I remember when Galactic Civilizations 2 came out, and Galactic Civilizations before it, and their line of games, people loved it because it was DRM free compared to Steam at the time, and it showed what digital distribution was capable of. One of the things that they promised consumers, and Steam did as well shortly after, was that no matter what happens to our companies, we guarantee that the games you download off us and purchase off us today are going to continue to work long after our servers flatline. And people said, okay, I can get into that. I can buy into that. Plus you organize my games, plus you allow multiplayer, plus you handle all the other cool stuff. Okay, I might not get all my games through you, but I'm going to get some of them. And what the fuck is this? You're having a sale and it's Christmas time and you're offering a game for $14.99? That's still full price in the store, because those retailers aren't going to be dropping prices quite as quickly as Steam has the flexibility to do. Okay, I'm going to buy that game off of Steam. And before we knew it, that's how we became Steam heads. We started seeing 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of our PC gaming library become digital. It wasn't overnight, it was gradual. And I'm sure there were many a boardroom meeting that I would have loved to have been the fly on the wall with regards to Valve and their board meetings and their executive meetings while they were planning this phased-in approach to eventually have us all wake up as Steam heads. And that's how it happened. That was the reality. So what did Don Matrick fuck up so bad? What did Xbox and Microsoft fuck up so bad? Well, you see, they made too much of a quantum leap relative to the same phased-in approach that we saw with Apple and with Valve and with Stardock. They went whole fucking hog. They went from one generation offering you used games, and that's the key, used games. Because used games allowed people without the economic purchasing power to buy as many games as the rich kid. And we all had that rich kid friend who could buy his 15, 20 Atari or SNES titles per year versus you, me, and a lot of others who could buy maybe 3, 4, 5 titles per year. Used games allowed us to get a few games more per year because we could take in those games that we'd already won and we could trade them in for a new game, for a new title. We also had the ability to swap games. I could trade a game with my buddy. He could trade the game back to me, a different game. And if I liked it enough, at least I had the opportunity to test it, to try it out, and then buy it for myself. So I think the used game and the trading game market was huge for giving consumers not just the purchasing power and ability to buy newer games, but the confidence. You could test titles, whether you did that through renting them, also huge, whether you did that through trade-ins, or whether you did that through swapping with your friend. If you liked the game, you would then go out and buy it more often than not, because you were fussy with the few dollars that you had to spend on entertainment. That was the big mistake that I think Microsoft and Don Matrick made. People were up in arms, literally fucking up in arms. Twitter, YouTube, the interwebs exploded with people marching against Microsoft with the old proverbial pitchforks and flaming torches, and they routed Don Matrick out of his fucking castle. And they made them do an about face. And all Sony had to do was sit back and do what? Nothing. Nothing. Their massive, huge, hyped marketing campaign consisted of nothing else other than, we're just not going to do what that guy's doing. We just saw Don Matrick jump the fucking moat and run for his life towards Zynga. How about we don't do that? And that was fucking genius. That will go down, in my opinion, as one of the best, tightest, smartest marketing strategies of all fucking time. Simply doing nothing. Letting your competitor hang himself with his own rope. It was fucking genius. And it had the effect everybody wanted. Do I think digital distribution is the future of consoles? Yep. Are people still going to be able to trade physical copies? For a while. But eventually, the digital adoption rate will be there. And the console makers will get their wish, and they will eventually be mostly pure digital distribution. But they've got to do it slow, and they've got to phase it in. Like the PC guys did. Your Stardogs and your Valves. Which brings me to the main point I was trying to make earlier when I introduced the whole subject, and that is Valve kind of not following their own advice or their own methodology to date of the slower approach, which makes sense because unlike Apple, you could argue that Valve was always a bit more dramatic with their leaps in technology. Phased, yes, but larger gaps between phases. So here we are, and we're asking PC gamers to adopt Linux. And don't get me wrong, the Linux community is great. Fantastic. You just have to look at the indie humble bundles. The Linux game supporters traditionally pledge a lot more per game. Their average is much higher. But percentage-wise, they're much smaller. So to ask users who've been used to Microsoft, I mean, the easy way out for Valve would just be to pay Microsoft a licensing fee and use the Windows platform, but Microsoft already fucked that up, didn't they, with Windows Live? And I think Gabe wants to be beholden to no one. So Linux was a logical choice. But it's going to be interesting to see how he makes that connection between consumers using Microsoft platform and asking the majority to use Linux with his hardware, and certainly with the controller. I mean, we're probably going to have an opportunity to still use mouse and keyboard, but you can see him looking, in some areas he's looking for the middle ground, the controller, because it's supposed to be able to approximate the feeling of mouse and keyboard. And any first-person gamers out there who use mouse and keyboard, I don't care what you think in terms of how good somebody can get on a gamepad, you're never, ever, ever going to be as good as a mouse and keyboard player. The best mouse and keyboard players are going to first-person circle your ass compared to a gamepad, and that's just reality. So this is giving them the confidence that here you go, you have a device that looks like a gamepad, but it kind of approximates the mouse and keyboard. You can play your strategy games. You might not be as good as your first-person shooters, but you can play your games like Civilization 5. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Because for every phased-in approach he takes like the controller, he makes a quantum leap like the operating system one. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be really tricky, but fuck are we in interesting times. Whether it's the Oculus Rift, Project Morpheus, Steam machines, digital distribution. One thing we can't argue, gaming is getting better and fucking better in terms of the user experience on the tech side. I'm still overjoyed with the gameplay experiences I get, whether it's something as simple as Dungeons of Dreadmore, whether it's something as technologically advanced as Titanfall, or something as mod-friendly as Skyrim. I still get the gaming rewards that I got in the past, enveloped in the new technology. So I think there's hope. Anyways, really curious to think to hear what you guys think about this, whether you agree with me, whether you think I'm on the fucking crack pipe or not. I've been known to be on that on occasion with my opinions. I'm curious to know what you think about digital distribution, about the future of the Steam machine, the controller, Linux as an OS, and digital distribution on the console platform. Let me know in the comments below, guys. And as always, cheers.